have a place to live in Highland Park before. So there's a track record of cooperation between the community and DND to come up with programs and plans to build housing. Now, so this map it's color-coded to help us understand the array of uses. Everything that's in yellow, and I have lists a parcel matrix that matches this map. All these little yellow parcels are vacant city-owned land, and you'll notice that there's a preponderance of them down here where the old Denison factory used to be, land now owned by the developer Dennis Walsh. But you know, all these little parcels here at one time had little tiny one-family houses, which actually were gone even by the time I moved here in '67.
Excuse me 1 second. Just for perspective, this is Washington Street, and Melnia Cass Rink is over there. The Shelbourne Center.
Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Yeah, Martin Luther King Boulevard. So this is the part of the hill that's down there. Yeah.
So here we are, way up here at First Church, and you can see right across Putnam some there are homes that are now occupied as a result of DND and PRC cooperation.
That's right here.
Exactly.
These houses here.
Usually when you go buy a property, I tell people, if you look at the foundation, if it looks like it was a poured concrete foundation, you know it's relatively new, even though it might be an older style. If you see it's made of Roxbury pudding stone, you're going to assume it was built before 1880. But because a lot of these houses are built in a style that is somewhat, hey, good to see you, in a style that at least tries to blend into the historic mix of housing styles. So the PRC, and Ted's been active in it, and Linda and Kai and Miguel has come to some of the PRC meetings. At the PRC meetings, you know, we agreed with D&D that we would try over the past several months and the coming few months to look at all of these city-owned parcels and develop a dialogue with our neighbors as to what we see fitting in within our vision for the neighborhood. There was a really nice design charrette sponsored by D&D. It was held at Reggie Lewis. Goodness, now it's almost 2 years ago. And I know that there's a vision statement that came out of that. There's another vision statement that the interpretation of the late Peter Lee. We can put that online to share. A lot of stuff now is going online. I just got an email from John Feuerbach a couple days ago. This map is now online, and I have the web page address so you can go there. So that, you know, some of these lots are so tiny that, you know, the city recognizes that they're too small to support maybe even a doghouse or a cat litter box. I mean, look at, there's a little tiny one right here just off of Kenilworth that is totally landlocked. I have no idea how it got there, but it's tiny. It might have been a garden plot at one time, and they didn't pay taxes on it, so the city took it for back taxes. There's one here on Kenilworth next to the church that is big enough.
Is it Christ Temple? Is that Christ Temple, or is it Christ Temple Refuge?
And it's actually, from the city's viewpoint, large enough to support possibly 2 or 3 units of housing. You know, the city wants housing. You've heard, you know, the late Mayor Menino talked about his goal for new housing. Mayor Walsh has talked about his goal for more housing. So there's a lot of pressure for housing, and we know in the private sector what's going on. A lot of these privately owned vacant lots are now, there's now housing going up. Near my house here on Hawthorne Street, there's a lot, I think there are either 6 or 8 condos that have just been built and are on the market for over $500,000 each. Then we have a developer who recently came for a letter of support for a minor zoning violation, so they can build 6 townhouses here on Cedar Street, near the intersection of Lambert Ave, kind of diagonally across from the playground of the schoolyard. We have our own development organization active in the neighborhood, that's Place Taylor. They've built on Beach Glen here. They've built the so-called powerhouse, the highly energy efficient house that's on the corner of Highland and Linwood, Highland and Linwood, near where Urbanica is building on land that they acquired from the Boston Housing Authority. So there's a lot of housing going on.
Say that
They
again.
built our house too.
Urbanica?
No,
Oh, no, Place
Taylor.
Taylor.
It was
Yes.
their first
Yeah.
house,
Yep,
yeah.
Right.
very energy efficient.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the hall.
No, on Dudley.
That's the, you know, one
Right
of the
next to the
hallmarks
barber
of it.
shop.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I like that design, by the way. That's a nice design.
did.
on
So
that
what do you have,
one.
like $10 electric bills?
I wish, man. If anybody has those, tell me what company you're using.
You know,
We're
it's-
not living in this town, that's for sure.
No, and exactly, and Ted and 4 other families live in housing that was developed with D&D blessing, built by Urbanica, and it's what they call E-positive housing, meaning it
It
produces set
produces
up
more electricity in the course of a year than we use living there.
and you know, you achieve that through super insulation and energy efficiency in all of your lighting fixtures and your appliances. So amazing things can happen in this neighborhood and are happening, some with city assistance and some totally in the private sector. So now the issue is open space. I mean, it has been an issue, you know, going back many years. The late Sam Sad tried to get the city to allow HYCC to, HYCC's building is right here on the corner of Fulda and Ellis. They wanted to use, or have permission to be using the lot where the old, actually it was the Highland Park Free School in its last uses before it was burned and torn down. That's a vacant lot that's contested because the city said, you know, I don't think we really even want to schedule a date to talk to the neighborhood about that. I mean, that was really a shock when I heard, when I saw that in print. It was a memo that was circulated from D&D. So now,
John, do we have the opportunity to just highlight John Eliot Square for a
yeah,
second?
I want to get to that, but I mean, I think that one of the things that we at the PRC realized, and Ted in particular articulated this at the last meeting, was that we don't want to lose sight of the forest here. You know, the forest, so to speak, is all of Highland Park. We can look at some individual trees which are up here. You may know about these little vacant lots down here next to Gately's. It's referred to as the Archer Bunnell site, and the city actually has issued their second RFP. The first one was flawed. There's an RFP out to develop that, and you can go online if you're interested.
Where is
and read
this?
about that.
Is that the one that Discover Roxbury put in?
Yes.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
met at the
Right.
police station
Right.
around
Yeah.
that.
Right.
At one time,
So
Urbanica
that's
had a mixed
down at the
use.
bottom of Dudley
And
Street.
also Dunkin' Donuts was gonna
And
go
the
Yeah,
away.
Dunkin'
there were
Donuts,
2 proposals.
what's
his
Now
name?
we understand there'll be multiple proposals coming in because the RFP was more clearly written, allowing mixed use, meaning a combination of retail and housing.
And I'm glad John brought up the point. What we're trying to do is go forward and have meetings with the different quadrants without negating the whole entire hill. And we're literally trying to have a vision for the entire neighborhood versus in these silos and in these pockets. But tonight, we're highlighting what's happening in John Eliot Square. Next week will be another meeting for a different part of the
Yeah,
hill.
next week we'll be talking more about some of these parcels down here.
Yeah, and then the following week, there'll be another meeting,
For parcels over here. We don't have a place for that meeting yet.
and we'll get a space.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, we're trying to have one large,
May I add something?
Yes,
Actually, there's
please.
actually some background in history. There's a moratorium in place in the PRC, placed against, this is the Parcel Review Committee
Yeah.
of the Highland Park Neighborhood Association. And there's been a moratorium which has been in place, I believe, since the fall of 2012.
Yeah, it was voted in, I think, late September. And the moratorium really was in reaction to the city's refusal to deal with some of the vision that Highland Park residents had expressed in the planning process. One of them was to make certain that abutters were informed and had an opportunity to participate in the planning process, you know, from the get-go. For example, there was a woman who grew up in the area. She then moved out. The house was torn down. She still owned the land. She went to the city to see if she could buy an abutting lot, so that she would then have a large enough parcel to build a new house. And she was totally rebuffed, and it wasn't really explained to her how she could manage that. Meanwhile, the city went ahead and created a project area that included the parcel that she wanted. So abutters' rights was one of the issues. The other was open space. Another what had to do with making sure that the architectural fabric of the neighborhood, diverse as it is, was respected. And I'm trying to think of another.
Well, I just want to add one point in relation to this moratorium, which is that the city has made it clear since this moratorium that they're not willing or interested in negotiating on individual parcels of land with us. And this probably strategically from their point of view is the way that they can get around the moratorium to a certain extent, because as long as that happens, it's very difficult to rally the entire community around a vision. And so we've taken it upon ourselves to try and create this larger vision. We've accepted the challenge of the DND essentially to say we can come to the table with a comprehensive vision that addresses the majority, if not all, of the city-owned parcels, and has a proposed designation for them or disposition of them, which we believe will make it very difficult for the city to continue to act as it has, which is with a certain degree of respect for the moratorium. However, some development continues often without our awareness until it's become too late to try and affect it. And as a last point attached to that, this location is under tremendous pressure because of all the development that's happening around it. And it's very important to this community to maintain a certain degree of social equity, that is, people who have been here for a long period of time have the ability to remain here as well. And the existence of all the lots in red, which are privately owned, makes it very difficult for us on our own to maintain that philosophy of social equity, because private developers can come in and build as-of-right projects, which are very expensive to purchase, and will fundamentally change not only the character, but the nature of this neighborhood, because it will change the economic base of it. And our thinking is that if we are successful in creating a vision that enlists the DND and the BRA, because the Redevelopment Authority also has parcels, those are outlined in blue, in realizing this vision collectively, that will enable us a slight amount, but still some leverage against all the redlined lots, because the BRA will want to see that this vision comes to fruition, which includes a component of social equity, includes respecting what the nature of this neighborhood is, and particularly includes the vision of the people who live here as to how we want to see this neighborhood grow.
The other thing is to remember is to follow you is that open space, green space, community space is part of our community benefits. Don't let them erase that, because if they hurt one part of the neighborhood, they're going to attack another part of the neighborhood. Part of our neighborhoods, even if certain lots are their budding lot next to like Hawthorne Youth and Community Center, the position is to keep it green space, open space, community space, so that the generation of today and the generations to come will have this open space there, so we're not all sardined in, but it's a place for learning. It's a learning lab. It's for all. If you don't maintain that and don't realize that if they're allowed to develop housing on there, you are going to sardine the entire neighborhood, where you will have residential rage, road rage, you will have all kinds of rage that you can't back off. It's very difficult once that's set.
And that's why it's important to have this conversation, because each quadrant of the neighborhood is different. Where should there be green space? Where should there be housing? Where should there be businesses? Sorry?
What kind of housing should there be?
What kind of housing mix should there be? what kind of businesses.
I agree. I think, one of the things you have to really look at is what's happening with the city of Boston and what's happening with the housing and the development that follows the demand of the people who are migrating to the city. Now they're building 300 and 400 square foot units in the Seaport area. They're building these little small, very, very small, tiny.
Yeah.
They're gonna be renting for like $2,000 a month. And so you come uptown, you come into a neighborhood where the demographics are a little bit different, the economics are a little bit different, and we talk about green space. So I don't know, I mean, you paid $500,000 for your home, okay? You're in this neighborhood. You have many, many people with these small, tiny lots, like on Valentine Street that John was just talking about. You know, the little roads that once existed. What is it, about a dozen houses there?
Oh, even more,
Yeah, right along that strip there on Valentine Road. Yeah,
exactly, on either side of Valentine.
Yeah, those are all little parcels there with small, tiny homes like the back of the hill townhouses over here in Mission Hill that people can live in. So you got to kind of like, you know, because I mean, I'm a player here. I'm a guy that's, you know, I'm not born here, but I've been in this city since the 40s. And, you know, I'm a guy that's been here, you know, developing and working and what have you. And I own some of these parcels myself. And I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do. I sold Madison Park, the ones up there on Fulton Street and Highland. And then I sold the homes for them. So I'm in and all around in this neighborhood myself. And so I'm a part of this community that some of you guys who are, we consider newcomers, you know, we're here and we're here to help and we're here to maintain some of the traditions that we all love. But it has to be some kind of a balance to it, you know. And also I want to make some money. So
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah.
And the city is really required to have a community benefit that goes along with their parcels for development. That's what it's all about. There needs to be something that comes out of that project that should be led by us. And we should say, well, you know, there should be a percentage or there should be some type of, you know, there should be some type of quantifiable, you know, benefit that comes out of these projects. Out of the Ferdinand, the Skylab is that benefit, okay? And that was forced. That was something we had to fight for. And it took 2 administrations for that to happen. That's a benefit from that, you know, $200 million project. We can do the same thing with these if we're strategic enough. But the best and highest usage, I believe in the mix. I don't believe in everything green space. I don't believe in everything housing. There needs to be an understanding of each quadrant and, well, first of all, the holistic view. And then secondly, what's best in this John Eliot Square neighborhood? What does this neighborhood have? You know, we have mosques, we have schools, we have, you know, elderly buildings, we have churches, we have businesses. You know, it's
very urban.
It's very hustle bustle. It's a thoroughfare. This is a thoroughfare. You know, people use this to go from Dudley to RCC and back and to Mission Hill, and it's a connector, you know, to Dudley Street and to Dorchester. So what do we see? And so we don't have to answer all the questions tonight, but we really should be thinking about these things. And even if you don't get to go to another meeting, submit something to me. I'll make sure that the larger group gets it. Especially Mia, you see that stuff on Kenilworth, and I know I'm saying that just because she lives there.
Yeah, I know.
Mandy, you know, but I think everybody should have some type of, you know.
The term